Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Suranjali Seal, and like I always say, if you are somebody that loves literature and is all about literature, then this is the channel for you. In our video today, we're going to continue with our discussion of the Anglo-Norman period. In my previous video, I've given you a historical background to the age, and today in this video, we're going to discuss the literary characteristics of the age and the works that have come out of the Anglo-Norman period. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. So first of all, let's just clear out the general confusions that we come across regarding this age. So there is this confusion that, is the Anglo-Norman period and the Middle English period one and the same? Okay, there we sometimes refer to a certain period of time, right? In a timeline, we refer to it as Anglo-Norman, also Anglo-Norman period. Then we also refer to it as the Middle English period. So is this age, okay, say from 1066 AD, you have the Anglo-Normans who have conquered England and now they're staying there, right? So French influence is going to find its way into the English language, into the English way of life. So this period from 1066 AD till 1500, that is 1500, right? This age is sometimes referred to as the Middle English period, and sometimes it is referred to as the Anglo-Norman period. So are they the same? Are these periods the same? So we have to understand a concept here. We have to understand a timeline. So let's take 1066 AD, right? The Normans have conquered England. They have made their way to England. Now they're going to settle there. From 1066 AD to 1500, it is known as the Middle English period. Okay. Within this period, you have divisions now. Within this period, you have, you have Chaucer coming in. You have finally the Normans extending their influence. Then you have the Age of Revival. Within this whole span of time only, these various things are taking place. So, in 1066 AD, after the Norman conquest, till 1300, it is the age before Chaucer. The age before Chaucer. Then you have the age of Chaucer. Okay, this is the age of Chaucer, 1300s to 1400s. It is the age of Chaucer. And then from 1400 to 1500, it is the age of revival. So these three things taken together is the Middle English period. That is, say 1100, 1200s, 1300s, 1400s and 1500s. These centuries together make up the Middle English period. So when we refer to the Anglo-Norman period as the Middle English period, it has to do with the cultural and linguistic context. I will explain everything in detail so that the concept is clear to you. So 1066 AD, Norman conquest happens. Normans find their way into England, and a new way of life, a new cultural and linguistic influence makes its way into the English way of life and the English language. Then, as years pass by, as centuries pass by, we have Chaucer coming in, weaving his magic. And after Chaucer, we have the Age of Revival. All of these three periods taken together form the Middle English period. So since the Anglo-Norman period same as the Middle English period? That's the question we asked. Since the Anglo-Norman period belonged to the Middle Ages or medieval times in British history, in Britain's history, this whole age is known as say Middle English period or the Middle Ages. Okay, and throughout these centuries, the Normans were ruling England. The Normans were present in England. This French influence was prevalent in England. That is why we refer to it. It belongs to this period only, this Anglo-Norman period, when they were ruling. And this whole age saw a transformation of language. It saw a transformation of Old English. In detail, we actually discussed Old English period, right? We discussed what was Old English. I told you it was a mix of Celtic languages, of Germanic tribes, their languages, and Latin. And now after the French influence comes in, it is Middle English. Old English has left the chat, so to say, okay? Old English now transforms and evolves into Middle English, which was being used during the Middle Ages in British history. What is the Middle Middle English period? What are the Middle Ages? What is the Anglo-Norman period? It is when the Normans made their way into England and they were ruling there. So the Middle English period spans this timeline, roughly 1100s. I'm just taking roughly 1100s to 1500s is the Middle English period, the Anglo-Norman period, the Middle Ages in British history. We also call it the Middle English period in history of English literature. So when you go and study history of England, right, the history of Britain, you will actually refer to this age as, it's like the same thing but different names. When you'll be talking about, say, political context, you'll say Anglo-Norman invasion, the Normans, it's the Anglo-Norman age. When you'll talk about English language, you will say it is the Middle English period because of the language spoken. When we'll talk in the historical context, you will refer to this period as the Middle Ages. Okay, so it's the same thing given different names in different contexts. Okay, so in English literature, we call it the Middle English period because of the language. We call it the Anglo-Norman period because of the French influence, because Normans came in and settled there. So let us look at this Middle English period. Okay, from 1066 roughly, I'm saying, is actually even 1100s, but let's just take it from the Norman conquest. We have 1066 AD to 1500 AD, and within this period you have three sections, three timelines. You have 1066 to 1300, which is before Chaucer. Then you have 1300s to 1400s, which is the age of Chaucer, and then you have 1400s to 1550, which is the age of revival. Together they make up the Middle English period. So I hope this is clear. Now the key difference between the Anglo-Norman and Middle English periods lies in their linguistic and cultural context. Like I said, linguistically, right, because of their the way they spoke and the way the English language evolved, it is referred to as the Middle English period. And culturally, because of the French influence, the Norman influence, the Norman way of life making its way into England, we refer to it as the Anglo-Norman period. So the Anglo-Norman period after the Norman conquest, leading to a shift in power, or led to a shift in power, where French became the language of the court and the aristocracy, while English remained the language of the common people. Middle English, that is 1100s to 1500s, refers to the period of significant language evolution, where Old English was transformed under the influence of Norman French, and eventually English emerged as the dominant language again. So the thing is, you see, Norman conquest happened and largely people were speaking English, right? Commoners were speaking English, the English language, Old English that is, which had Celtic, Germanic and Latin influences, right? So Old English was being spoken in England, and then, you know, you have the Norman conquest. Now, I already talked about who were the Normans, right, and who were the Anglo-Normans. So now, the Normans in my previous video, please do check it out. It'll be more clearer to you this video. So, you know, they come and stay in England, and now immediately you cannot, like, you and I, suppose, are commoners, we're speaking English, and now, after an invasion, our king tells us speak French. Will we be able to speak French? We don't have proper schooling. We don't have an idea of the French language. Okay, we know Latin, we know Celtic, we know Old English, right? But we do not know French. So the king cannot just immediately come and say that speak French from tomorrow. Like, because we don't know the language. So you and I will continue to speak in English only, but the king and his advisors and his people of the court and his trusted advisors who have come with him, right? He actually, from Normandy, he attacked Britain. Then from Normandy, people had come to establish some kind of a hierarchy and rule in the court, right? They will speak in French. Like, you know, they will not speak Old English. I'm just trying to make this clear. Suppose I'm just giving this is just an example. Take me at face value. Do not take me literally. I'm just giving an example. Suppose I am, or maybe you are speaking English. Okay, you are the commoner, and I usurp the kingdom and I come and become king. Okay, I become the king, and from tomorrow I'll say you speak French. Will you be able to speak French? You cannot do that because you know English, it's your common language. But me, from my country or from my kingdom, I bring my noblemen, I bring my trusted advisors, I bring people of the court, I bring people who I trust to come and form kind of form a court, you know, to run things, form an administration with hierarchy. These people who have come with me from my kingdom, okay, to help me rule this new kingdom which I've acquired, we will speak in French, right? Because that's the language we were using back home. So now this empire or this kingdom has been added to my empire, so I'll continue to speak French. And that is why the aristocracy, okay, here I've given it clearly, the people of the court and the aristocrats who were helping the king, this new king, run this new place, right? These people all spoke French. They all French became the dominant language of the aristocracy, and say the bureaucracy, the aristocracy, and the people of the court, all these people of power, name, fame, who were dear to the king, who were close to the king, who were doing his work, okay, who were aiding him, were speaking in French. Makes sense. But the rest of us commoners who were part of an old empire, the Anglo-Saxons, we know Old English and we continued to speak English. It was the common language of the common people. Sorry, not the common language, it was the language of the common people. So what is Middle English then? So the Middle English period generally spans from around 1150 to 1500s, marking a significant shift in the English language after the Norman conquest. This period often divided into sub-periods like Anglo-Norman era, the Age of Chaucer, the Barren Age, each reflecting distinct literary and linguistic features. So historically, it's the Middle Ages. Historically, linguistically, it is the Middle English period. But within this period, many things were happening. So you have, a culmination, or you have like sub-periods within this period, and this is what it is. So I hope that the confusion is clear. Now, the rest of the slides are going to be comparatively easy. This is one thing that we have to understand regarding the Middle English period, because there's a lot of confusion regarding it. So I hope this is clear. Now we are going to move on to the next slide. So let us quickly just recap. England became a trilingual country. Now you understand from my previous video and today's video, it should be very, very clear. Latin, while English and French were spoken by the majority of the population, Latin remained the language of the church, and educated clergy used it for religious services, writing and scholarly pursuits. I told you, there were missionaries who were sent to England. England was actually, or maybe, Celtic England or Celtic Britain, okay, when originally it was pagan, okay, pagan. There was no conversion. People were Celts were pagans who were living there. Then the Roman conquest happened. When the Roman conquest happened, Roman way of life made its way into England. Latin also became a language. Then when Christianity happened, when the advent of Christianity took place in 2nd AD or 5th AD, 5th century AD, by that time when the advent of Christianity happened in England, and that time there were, missionaries sent by the Pope to England to convert the people there. So you have Latin influences, right? You have the Pope sending people from his area, right? So you have Latin influences from there coming into England. So the church still held on to the Latin roots. The church still held on to the Latin language. So sermons and scholarly pursuits and religious services and sermons were all being given in Latin only. English was not being used. French, out of the question, because it's a very new era, right? French was relatively new in the kingdom, so it was just being used by the king and his people, like people who were helping him rule. So this essence of Latin, or the root, okay, Latin was being held by the church. Church did not use English. Also, church did not use. The church did not use French. Also, it held on to its Latin roots, and sermons and services all were conducted in Latin only. So, Norman French. Following the Norman conquest, Norman French became the language of the court. This, I think, now is very clear. Nobility and administration, replacing English as the language of the elite. So, French became the language of the elite. It replaced English. English was left for the common people. The elite, so to say, were using French, and it was also used in legal proceedings and government. So, it was a very new addition. So, it's the second language that we're talking about. Then we have English. The majority of the population continued to speak and use English, especially in everyday life in rural areas. So, in a sense, England became a society where different languages were spoken by different social classes. So, I just want to give an idea, right? If you are wondering, how did English become the English that we speak today, that I am speaking right now, that you will be you are speaking, or you have an idea of, this English is a product of assimilation, of coming together of different languages, maybe centuries old, okay, in say 5th century AD or 6th century AD, centuries before, right? English had a totally different face. It did not sound, or it did not it did not have the same rules as it does now. It evolved, and even today English is evolving. It is all assimilating. I've always mentioned this in many of my videos, that English is all encompassing. It is assimilating. It attracts. It actually absorbs bits and pieces from other languages and evolves over time. It has evolved over time, and that's how it has evolved today. So English has, till the period that we have covered, Anglo-Saxon and Anglo-Norman period, till now, how many languages has English actually absorbed? It was Celtic languages, Germanic tribes, their languages, Latin, and now French. So it is an amalgamation of 4 languages till now. And even today, there are many Indian words also that have been added to the Oxford English Dictionary. So there's so many, like chai is also a word now. So what I'm trying to tell you is, English is absorbing, even now, that the centuries that we have covered. So now, say till the 1500s or 1400s, age of Chaucer, right? That till that age, right, English is still absorbing bits and pieces. Now you'll see how even French influence finds its way into the English language. So the Norman invasion of England did not cause a French migration to England. That is, from Normandy, all the Normans who had migrated, from Normandy, the invasion, the king invaded England, but all the people of Normandy did not just travel, did not just travel across the English Channel and went and settled in Britain. Migration did not happen. When William the Conqueror ascended the English throne, this is again from my previous video, I think you will understand it. When he ascended the English throne, he brought with him just 6,000 men, out of whom most were mercenaries, who left the country after the war, right? They went back to Normandy, and after winning the Battle of Hastings by 1077. The ruling French aristocracy that replaced the English nobility usually comprised of the ruling class, to whom William gave English estates after becoming King of England. Now, don't take me literally, but I'm just giving an example here so that you understand, okay? So suppose these people, right, people who had traveled with William the Conqueror, okay, with him, whoever had traveled to England, they were traveling from Normandy. You have Normandy, then you have the English Channel, and then you have the country, the Britain, right, the island of Britain. So you have people from Normandy crossing a body of water and going to fight there. So once the fight is over, these mercenaries will come back home, right? Their families are home. But there are some people who stayed back. For example, the French aristocracy. Okay, these were people who were the ruling class who accompanied William the Conqueror to England and stayed there. Why did they stay? You have to give them a reason to stay, right? So how? For example, you have William, he gave them estates. Suppose, I'm just giving an example, I am the king and I bring you with me, that come, you'll help me rule here. And you'll say, how will I rule here? My family, everybody is in Normandy, so I can't leave my family and just come here and rule because you're my king. So what will I say? I'll say, see, I will give you estates. I will give you a home here. I'll take care of your security. I'll give you perks, they say, right? Perks and allowances. I'll give you a good salary. I'll give you good security. I'll give you land. I'll give you homes. I'll give you a house to stay here. Bring your family and stay here, but help me rule. So I'm giving you an incentive. I'm giving you a reason to stay. So William gave English estates after becoming King of England to these people of the French aristocracy, people of the ruling class. He gave land, and so they chose to stay there with him. So these were a handful of people, Norman people, who came then became Anglo-Normans. That is, they intermarried, stayed there. Like, that's the normal thing, okay? They'll intermarry, mix with the local population, all of that. But you have to understand, it's not that the whole of the Normans came and settled in England. It was just these few people who came there, settled there, and then French made its way into the English language, and the Norman way of life also influenced the Saxon way of life. Saxon way of life is now going away, like, because Normans have entered the scene. So this is the whole scene. England became a trilingual country. Now, finally, let's just talk about the literary characteristics of the age. So, Anglo-Norman romance, a form of literature popular during the period following the Norman conquest of England, was strongly influenced by French courtly romance and chivalric ideals. It often featured stories of knights, adventure, and love, drawing from both French and Celtic sources, and emphasized the importance of noble character and bravery over birthright. So, see, what are the takeaways? Anglo-Norman romance. Okay, this was the dominant literary genre of the age. Literary characteristics, right, that we're talking about involved romance, involved upholding or justifying and depicting chivalric ideals, and it is through this that they actually emphasize on the importance of a noble character. So it is a shift from the Anglo-Saxon age literature. Okay, and we're going to see how. Anglo-Saxon literature focused on heroic deeds like Beowulf, we've discussed that, right? Like Beowulf, and moral codes, usually written in alliterative verse. Everything I've discussed in detail, even alliteration. Now, while Anglo-Norman literature embraced ideals of chivalry, courtly love, and romantic adventures. That is the Anglo-Norman romance. Okay, romance was stressed upon. What are the characteristics? French influence, of course, like I said, because French made its way into the English way of life and English language, right? So Anglo-Norman literature, particularly romance, was heavily influenced by the French culture and language brought by the Normans. Makes sense. Courtly love. Like French courtly romances, Anglo-Norman works often explored themes of courtly love, where knights would pursue a lady and demonstrate their bravery and devotion. So now we have courtly love, where who is the central character, who is the ideal, the knight in shining armor. Just remember this, okay? I'll explain everything. Knight in shining armor. Chivalry. The ideals of chivalry, such as courage, honor, and service to others, was prominent in Anglo-Norman romance. So you have the knight in shining armor who has to be the ideal. We look up to this knight in shining armor, okay? Celtic legends, see, they have inhabited a land, they've come from outside, inhabited land. So you have generations of culture that is handed down. So Celtic influence was also there, the original, right? The Celtic influence, Celtic legends were also dealt with, okay, were also influenced or taken up, So you have many Anglo-Norman romances also drew inspiration from Celtic legends and tales, particularly those related to the legendary King Arthur. So King Arthur, the knight in shining armor who has upheld the code of honor, code of conduct of the knights, okay, he is the ideal, and he starts, or his stories, okay, are find prominent place during this period. So then you have themes of adventure. Romance often involved knights again on quests, facing challenges, demonstrating their skills and courage. Importance of noble characters. Anglo-Norman romances often portrayed knights who proved their worth through their noble character and bravery, rather than solely relying on aristocratic birth. So before I'll just give you here everything that I read through right now. I just read through, right? Everywhere there's this knight in shining armor. There's this stress on nobility. There's this stress on noble character, on morality. There's this stress on adventure, yes, on finding yourself, finding your ground, on moral codes of conduct, right? Everywhere you're finding this, you're finding there's romance and love and this grandeur that is happening, and in that you have this ideal character, you have this stress on morality and self-control and self-ideals and principles and morals, and it's all about ideals, and there's a reason behind it, which I'm going to tell you. But you have to remember that more or less it's about adventures, it's about the romances, it's about this knight in shining armor and the damsel in distress. You have strict codes of chivalry, strict codes of honor, okay, which you have to honor as the ideal. You have to look up to these codes of conduct, and this is the romantic adventures and courtly love and chivalry that is being dealt with in Anglo-Norman literature. So you might ask me, in Anglo-Saxon age, there was this focus on heroism, this heroic poetry. Beowulf, we talked about this person with courage and strength who'll go and he fought off 3 demons or 3 monsters and he came out victorious. We have this character called Beowulf. Okay, it is all about might, it is all about valor. But now we have a change to chivalry, where it's not just about I'm going to hit you, it's also about whether I should hit you or not. Like, if you understand what I'm saying, you can have a lot of courage, but what is wisdom? And I mentioned this, if you have been regularly watching my videos, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is about Wisdom is when you should do something and when you shouldn't do something. Suppose you have the strength. I'm going to hit you. I'm going to hit you, and you have only strength, bodily strength. Strength without wisdom is useless. I told you. You have to have the wisdom of when to use your mouth, when to use your strength, when you should just leave it. That's your wisdom as a human being. And who is the person that I talked to or talked about in my previous video? It's Chaucer's first character in the Canterbury Tales, and it is against that character that we compared all the other characters, right? All the other characters are going to be compared with the knight in shining armor. So what I'm going to say is this: you have an ideal, this whole age, the French influence, the romances that are taking place. Yes, it's about adventure. Yes, it's about this knight who is going to rescue a damsel in distress, but more so it is a depiction of the mentality of the times. Now you'll understand all of these characteristics which I mentioned here, the literary characteristics of the age. You will understand this when I explain my next slide. So let's get right into it. Now, I clearly told you that, literature is an expression of the times. Even if it's not accurately expressing anything, it is a depiction of the mentality, the sensibility. It captures the sensibility and reflects it, right? In the works, we find the times. When we read Jane Austen, we're not just reading about Jane Austen. We're not just reading about her feelings. We are actually understanding the romantic age. When we're reading something, say, from Virginia Woolf, we're not just reading Woolf's personal motives or personal ideas. We're also given a glimpse into the, into the modern age. Similarly, when we are reading this age, Anglo-Norman period, and we talk about chivalry, we talk about this knight in shining armor, we talk about morality. Why? Because that was the lifestyle at the time. When the Normans came and they settled in England, there was an emphasis on chivalry. There was a moral code of conduct. I told you, aristocrats, and there was a social order. Aristocrats, the aristocracy, okay, there were knights who were appointed to actually serve the king, knights in shining armor, and these knights were supposed to uphold a code of conduct. They were supposed to behave in a certain way. These were rules for them. They swore chivalry. They swore into their service. They would swear that I solemnly swear that I am going to, like, henceforth after being knight, I'm going to uphold these ideals. And those ideals were very, very important. Like, suppose you have, say, you have an ideal, okay? It can be a singer, it can be an actor, whoever it is. You look up to that actor and you like that actor not just because that person acts. If that person is a good human being, you'll be more attracted to that person. You have an ideal, okay? Like for me, suppose this very I'll just give a layman's example, okay? For me, there is an ideal. My mom and dad, I see my mom and dad and I thank them for giving good examples, setting good examples for me to follow. And my ideal is there that, see no evil, do no evil, and say no evil, no? You just do what is right. You continue to do your duty, that kind of a thing, okay? Just this is an example I'm giving you, okay? So my ideal is there, and every day that I live my life, I'll behave in a way that I uphold these ideals, right? That I follow these principles, follow these values, principles, values in our life. Similarly, knights were expected to behave in a certain way, to uphold a moral code of conduct, so that people who saw them, right, they will be an ideal, they will set a standard in society, because it was a hierarchical society, okay? So let us just understand, what do we mean by chivalry? What was this code of conduct? Why are knights so important? So chivalry was highly valued by the Normans as a mean to regulate and the behavior of the knights. Now I'll just give an example, okay? Establish a code of conduct for the nobility. Say IAS officers and police officers, they're not just given power, okay? Like for example, the constitution give powers, right? That, okay, this is the power of a police officer, this is the power of an IAS officer. These are IPS and IAS officers have these set of powers, okay? These are rules and regulations that the constitution gives them power. I'm giving, okay? But the constitution also limits the power of the government. I've mentioned this before. It limits the power of the government. For example, a police officer is supposed to, protect us. It's within the justice system. He's supposed to protect us. So if he abuses his power, then who will punish him? If a police officer becomes corrupt, who will punish him? Is the law that will punish him, right? Similarly, there was a code of conduct for the knights, that yes, you have power. The knights in shining armor have a lot of power. They were very strong, and they had a lot of strength, but they cannot violate the code of conduct. If they violate the code of conduct, then it was punishable. You're a knight and you're supposed to follow a set of rules also. You understand? You're supposed to follow a set of rules also. So this was because you establish a code of conduct for the nobility and separate them from the common people. You set a standard for the common people. You look up, the common people will be in awe of you. That's why there's a lot of celebration of the knights. King Arthur is celebrated, because they were given this code of conduct to separate themselves from the common people, so that common people look up to them, and at that time there were knights who actually followed this code of conduct, um, this was done. I hope you understand that this was done, of course, to separate the society also, okay, to create the divide between the common people and the aristocracy, but also so that they can set an ideal. In every work of literature of Arthur, you have this ideal of, say, bravery, of courage. You see Arthur being the embodiment of courage, of bravery, of chivalry, of moral codes, okay, with of utmost respect to women. It's like that, okay. So you have this code of conduct. It provided a framework for martial prowess, that is, they were strong, loyalty and honor, often emphasizing romantic ideals and courtly conduct. That is, romantic ideals and courtly conduct, let's understand this. Knightly behavior was regulated. Chivalry was a code of conduct for knights, particularly in the context of medieval warfare, where violence and abuse of power were common. So in medieval warfare, okay, violence and abuse of power, like I said, if the police officer himself commits a crime, then who will punish him? So to regulate that, you had this code of conduct, that you are supposed to behave this way. Then it aimed to instill values of honor, loyalty, and protect the weak, encouraging a more civil and ordered society. This is done for order in the society. A police officer also cannot violate the laws. If a police officer violates his own power, then he's going to be penalized. He's going to get, punished by the law. Say an IS officer turns out to be corrupt, then it's punishable by law. Everything. You're giving power to a person, but you're also regulating that person does not abuse his power. Same thing over here. The knights were given a moral code of conduct to see if they do not abuse their power, to structure the society, to create an ordered society. So this code of conduct, say for example, prohibited the knights from gambling, from drinking, alcoholism, and from abusing their prowess, right? Because they were strong people, so to get into fights and all of this, they actually, this whole code of conduct barred them from actually making these kind of mistakes, which cause chaos in the society. Then you have establishing the nobility. Chivalry helped solidify the social standing of the nobility by setting them apart from commoners. That you are seeing, suppose you're in a hotel, okay, this is a restaurant, okay, so this is a restaurant, we both are having dinner here, suppose. Now you have on the one side a commoner who's a drunkard, alcoholic, and he's sitting there and he's getting into fist fights with other people. And in the opposite table near us, we have a knight in shining armor who, people are yelling at him and all, but he's just quietly having his dinner with a lot of dignity, with a lot of, gravity. He's just having dinner. Who will you respect more? You'll respect the commoner who is fighting with everybody, or you'll respect this person who everybody's yelling at, but he just doesn't care. He knows who he is. He's holding his dignity and just sitting there and having his dinner. We'll remember the knight more, right? We'll remember him. We'll take him into our good books. He'll be in an elevated position. So it helps them to set a standard in society, and thereby it sets them apart from the commoners. It sets them, they have a set rule of behavior, they have a set rule of conduct, the way they speak, the way they treat you is completely different from how a common person would treat you. So this helped establish the nobility, the aristocracy, okay. So through a distinct code of behavior and demonstrating a perceived superiority, thereby superiority, like that I'm too good for you. I do not go into fist fights. I do not go into, I'm higher up the ladder. They have that aura with them that yes, I'm higher up the ladder because this is how we behave, this is how one should behave. I'm the embodiment of bravery, I'm the embodiment of chivalry, I'm the embodiment of morality. I am the one who has courage, honor, bravery. The way I treat people and the way I treat women is of utmost respect. So by default, no, they're actually going higher up the ladder, and commoners used to be in awe of them, like I said. Okay, so promoting romantic ideals, chivalry became deeply associated with romantic notions of chivalry. Romantic notions of chivalry. Romantic notions, no, it's not in the sense of romance as we think of today, as in love all the time. Okay, romance in the sense, no, you idealize, you see romantic sense of chivalry, that yes, a knight is there and a commoner is there, and the knight just politely opens the car door for you. So you will not consider that to be cliched. Like now we consider that to be cliche, or most people don't like it. But at that time, during those times, if this person of this particular social standing is opening a door for you and doesn't know you, but is doing it out of sheer, like, his personality is such that he's helping people, it was high, it was regarded with very high esteem, regarded in good esteem, okay, of the people. So often seen in literature and art. So in literature and art, they further depicted it, okay. So emphasizing courtly love, bravery and generosity towards women. You might argue with me that what is it about courtly love? Why does love have to be included in chivalry? So love over here, right? It's not just like normal love, like the love that we go through today. A boy meets girl and then they fall in love and all that. The hurdles also, no, that are depicted in literature, like say if you talk about King Arthur, they are like elevated hurdles, okay. Like you will cross mountains and oceans for the person you love. That's where the idea comes from. I'll do anything for the person. All is fair in love and war. All of those things are coming from this romanticized idea of love, that a person who is in love with another person will cross borders and will cross barriers that life throws at us, when we actually pursue the person we love. And these are adventures we're talking about. So the hurdles that come also are elevated in magnitude. They're of high magnitude, the hurdles that come. They can be supernatural hurdles. There can be, magical, mystical hurdles that you have to overcome for your love. Those kind of ideas, okay, they are romanticized. And generosity towards women. So, this is nothing new, generosity towards women. This code of conduct, this rule book for the knights would be treat women nicely. But in today's world also, I'm so sorry, okay, there's so many dogs barking outside. If you can hear it, please just try and ignore it. That's out of my control. So here I'm just trying to make it a little clearer. Okay, I'm just speaking a little loudly so that you can hear me better. So in case of the romantic ideals, like I said, the knights were expected to be brave, protect the weak, protect women, protect children, and at the same time they were supposed to be generous towards women, that is, treat women nicely, treat them with respect. Now, I'll tell you something, this is nothing different. Even in our times now, in our world now, we have rules, right, that are women-centric and children-centric, reserved rules for them, right? So, in the same way, that time also they had reserved codes of conduct for knights, that if you're a knight, you're supposed to treat women this way. That is so that you can create an ordered society, a society which actually does not foster or does not promote violence, a society where you do not promote corruption. You have a society where you have an ideal. This is the ideal, this is the rule book, you have to follow it. So you have influence on daily life. So chivalry influenced various aspects of aristocratic life, including courtly rituals, jousting, tournaments, hunting, and even courtship. So in everyday life you had chivalry creeping in. Chivalry found its place in everything that people did during that time. In everyday life there was chivalry, okay? In every chapter of life there was chivalry during the Middle Ages. So values of chivalry, core values of chivalry included prowess in battle, loyalty to one's lord, that is king and god, okay? To god and king you have to be loyal, you have to be courageous, you have to have generosity, courtesy, and a sense of honor. And a sense of honor, that is, you don't do anything that is dishonorable, okay? So what I'm saying is, all of these things, right, was a way of life for the knights, was a way of life for the aristocrats. Commoners were seeing it and they were trying to implement it into their lives as well. And this is a common strand. See, we have fans, right? Suppose you are a fan of a band, okay, and chances are that whatever the band does, you'll try to do. If the band sells out t-shirts, so you'll take out t-shirts. If the band dresses in a particular way, you'll dress in a particular way. So that influence I'm talking about. Even today, you have football fans, you have cricket fans, you have music fans of different people. We try to mimic, or we try to get influenced, right? Even the term influencer comes from Instagram. We get influenced when we see other people. So knights were upholding that ideal so that commoners and other people would see and get influence incorporated in their lives, and also of course to set them apart, like I said. So this is chivalry. And now when you read this and then you go back to the previous slide and you read the characteristics of the literature of the times, you'll have your answer. So French influence, Anglo-Norman literature, particularly romance, was heavily influenced by the French culture and language by the Normans. Courtly love, like I said, French courtly romances, Anglo-Norman works often explore themes of courtly love, where knights would pursue a lady and demonstrate their bravery and devotion. So no corruption in love as well. You're going to move mountains for your lady love. Then you have chivalry. The ideas of chivalry, such as courage, honor, and service to others, were prominent in Anglo-Norman romance. So service to others, a just society, a civil society, an ordered society. Then you have Celtic legends. Of course, like I said, Celtic influences are going to be there. Many Anglo-Norman romances also drew inspiration from Celtic legends and tales, particularly those related to the legendary King Arthur. Then you have themes of adventure. Romance often involved knights on quests, facing challenges, demonstrating their skills and courage. That is, you're going to do anything for truth. You're going to do anything for loyalty. You're going to do anything for justice. Okay, those kind of things. Then you have importance of noble characters. Anglo-Norman romances often portrayed knights who proved their worth through their noble character and bravery, rather than solely relying on their aristocratic birth. That is not by virtue of being a king's son or aristocratic birth that you're born into a privileged family. That does not decide whether you're a good person or a person of value. The way you treat others, the way you lead your life, the way you conduct yourself is what determines your worth, your respect, okay, and your personality and character as a human being. So who you are is not decided by birth, but by your choices. That's the thing. Okay, so I think you understood this. Now very quickly we're going to look at the works that this age has produced. So let us talk about the first work, literary work, which is Historia Regum Britanniae, the history of the kings of Britain, originally called On the Deeds of Britons. So the trick is, in the question answers, sometimes they might mention Historia Regum Britanniae, or they might mention On the Deeds of the Britons. So whenever you see the two names, don't get confused. Okay, it's the same book. Originally it was called something, and later it was called Historia Regum Britanniae. So what I'm saying is, remember both the names. So it is a fictitious historical account of British history written around 1136. This we have to remember, by Geoffrey of Monmouth. Okay, so we have to remember who wrote it also. Now, who was Geoffrey of Monmouth? He was a Welsh monk who wrote this work in Latin. So remember, I told you in the second slide that England became a trilingual country. So first, English was spoken by the commoners, French was being spoken by the aristocracy, and the clergy and the church, okay, people of the church, the clergy was speaking in Latin. So Geoffrey of Monmouth is a Welsh monk, part of the clergy, so it's natural that he wrote this work in Latin. So it chronicles the lives of the kings of Britons over the course of 2000 years, beginning with the Trojans founding the British nation and continuing until the Anglo-Saxons assumed control of much of Britain around 7th century. So this is just like a chronological chronicle, that is, it tells the history of Britain. But as students of literature, what is important for us? We have to remember what or which writers got influenced by these works to produce other works. Okay, so which works by other writers are influenced by Geoffrey Monmouth's Historia Regum Britanniae? First is Shakespeare's King Lear. King Lear has been influenced by this Geoffrey Monmouth's work. We have to remember that. Sir Thomas Malory's Les Morts d'Arthur is also influenced by this work, Historia Regum Britanniae. We have to remember that. And Sir Thomas Malory's Les Morts d'Arthur also influenced Alfred Lord Tennyson in writing Idylls of the King. Idylls of the King by Alfred Lord Tennyson was primarily influenced by Sir Thomas Malory's Les Morts d'Arthur. So the idea here for the last one, I have to remember, you just understand this. Suppose I write about flowers. You get influenced by my work. You write about the flowers again. Okay, in a different way you write, or a different thing you write about the flowers again. Then your friend reads your work, what you have written, and writes about the flowers again. But originally I have written it, right? So indirectly, your friend is influenced by me only because I wrote it first, right? I'm the original. So I wrote it first, then you wrote something in regarding to it, influenced by me. Then your friend wrote something else regarding it, influenced by you. But in truth, your friend is influenced by me, right? Because I wrote it first. Same way, Historia Regum Britanniae was first written by Geoffrey of Monmouth. Then Sir Thomas Malory got inspired by it and wrote Les Morts d'Arthur. And by getting inspired by Thomas Malory's work, Alfred Lord Tennyson wrote Ideals of the King. But indirectly, he is influenced by Historia Regum Britanniae only. So this is the thing. These are the three you have to remember. Shakespeare's King Lear, Sir Thomas Malory's Les Morts d'Arthur, and Alfred Lord Tennyson's Idylls of the King are all inspired by Historia Regum Britanniae. So now we're going to move on to the next two works. So let's talk about Brut. It is also known as the Chronicle of Britain, and it is a Middle English alliterative verse. It has been written by Layamon. Okay, so Layamon's Brut, which is commonly known as, it is written in Middle English. Middle English. Remember, not Old English, the Saxon Age Old English of Celtic, Germanic, and Latin influences. No, it's not that English. We are talking about Celtic, Germanic, Latin plus French influence. Together is Middle English, right? So he has written it in Middle English in alliterative verse. Alliteration has not left the chat. It was present in Anglo-Saxon age. I've already talked about it, and now it's still continuing here. So you have this Layamon's Brut, which has been written in Middle English alliterative verse by the English priest Layamon, and it is 16,096 lines long, narrates a fictionalized version of the history of Britain up to the early Middle Ages, and includes an enlarged section on the life and exploits of King Arthur. This is the first book to talk of King Arthur, which presents the life of King Arthur. Okay, this Layamon's Brut is the first one to do it, so remember that. Next, we have the most celebrated one from this age, which is Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. So it is a 14th century chivalric romance. You know what is romance, you know what is chivalry now, so you can understand what are the themes included here. Then you have in Middle English alliterative verse again. So this is also the same. The author is unknown. The title was given centuries later, that it just existed as a manuscript, but later, researchers, scholars read it and all, then they gave it its name. So it is one of the best known Arthurian stories, the most important of all Arthurian romances, the Gawain cycle. Okay, now see, which is the first book to present Arthurian stories? It's Layamon's Brut, which is the most important of Arthurian romances. It is contained in the Gawain cycle, okay, in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. The Gawain cycle in the Arthurian legend refers to a collection of stories and poems that focus on Sir Gawain, a prominent knight of King Arthur's Round Table. Okay, so if you want, you can do your own little bit of summary reading of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, but this is what you have to remember. Now we're going to move on to the last two works from this age. Okay, so let's talk about The Owl and the Nightingale, which is the next work that we're concerned with. So it is a 12th or 13th century Middle English poem. I think now you'll understand what Middle English is, detailing a debate between an owl and a nightingale as overheard by the poem's narrator. So you can understand this also. There's an owl and a nightingale that are probably on a branch debating, and the poet, the person, the narrator, is listening to what they're talking about, what they're debating about. It is the earliest example in Middle English of a literary form known as debate poetry. You have to remember this, the earliest example of a debate poetry, a verse contest, because they're debating, right? Okay, they're debating. And the verse contests from the time period were usually written in Anglo-Norman or Latin, right? This poem shows the influence of French linguistic, literary, and rhetorical techniques after the Norman conquest. So that is Anglo-Norman and Latin influence. I think this is very factual. You'll understand this because I've detailed out everything from the Norman age and literary characteristics now. And lastly, we come to the last work, important work from this age. Of course, there are others that have been written, but these are the five to six, I think. No, five important works that we have to concern ourselves with from the Anglo-Norman age, the last of which is Pearl. So Pearl is also a work. It is a 14th century Middle English poem again, with elements of medieval allegory and from the dream vision genre. So this is again very, very important. See, what are the new things? We had heroic poetry, right? We had Beowulf and all that. Now we have Beowulf was celebrated heroism, valor, courage, and everything. Here we have, we have different techniques being used. That is interesting. In this age of the Norman period, right, we have debate poems, right, verse contest, which is the Owl and the Nightingale. Then we have Historia Regum Britanniae. It is a historical chronicle, right. Now we again have Pearl, which is an allegory, okay, allegorical poem, okay. It is an allegory, and from the dream vision genre, dream vision, right. Kubla Khan is one dream vision. The dream vision genre which we know of today is of course different from the ones that we are seeing here, but what I'm trying to stress at is that this is something new. It is something new in the age. The medieval age was producing these kind of literature also, these kind of new genres also. So we're going to look at the summary. So what is the summary of the Pearl? It is a father mourning the loss of his pearl, okay, pearl. That is, it's probably a personification, okay. The pearl over here, right, it is symbolic, sorry, not personification. The pearl over here is symbolic of somebody he loves, a maiden he loves, okay. And he loses his pearl. This pearl he loses, and he falls asleep in a garden. So he sleeps, and the dream vision starts, okay. The dream vision starts. In his dream, he encounters the pearl maiden, a beautiful and heavenly woman standing across the stream in a strange landscape. In response to his questioning and attempts to obtain her, she answers with the Christian doctrine. So these kind of stories were being again written because they were actually influencing the public, right? So influencing in the public, those were the codes of conduct. You're writing about Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, so you're actually when somebody will read it, they'll be influenced by it. Here too, they're showing us the importance of the afterlife, that not afterlife, sorry, they're showing us the importance of heaven and earth, of good deeds, that after a person passes away, like she replies with the Christian doctrine that afterwards she's in heaven, eventually she shows him an image of the heavenly city and herself as part of the retinue of Christ the Lamb, that he's mourning, he's sad, right, that he is this maiden is dies, okay, she's dead, and he's mourning her loss, and she appears to him in a dream vision, shows him the heavenly city, and shows herself to be a part of it. So however, when the dreamer attempts to cross this stream and touch her or grab her, obtain her, he awakens suddenly from his dream and reflects on its significance. So here they're trying to emphasize, like say Sir Gawain and the Green Knight and the Arthurian legends emphasize on chivalry, on the romance aspect, the French romance and everything. Here Pearl, the Owl and the Nightingale, and all of these other, Leamon's historical Regium Britanniae are trying to touch upon different aspects of life, the spiritual aspects of life, the importance of doing good deeds, the importance of having morality, valor, different aspects of life. Now we're branching out, different genres are coming out, and that's what makes the literature of this time all the more vibrant, variant, and varied. So this is the Anglo-Norman period. We are done with the historical background, done with the literary characteristics, talked about few of the important works. If you want to check out the summary of the works, you can do so. These are the important things you have to remember from this age. So that is it for today, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed the video today. We'll continue with our sessions or these discussions on the history of English literature in the subsequent videos, or the consequent videos, or the next videos that are to come. So till then, I really hope that you stay healthy and happy. If my videos have been helpful for you, then please don't forget to like the videos, subscribe to my channel, and share the videos if they have been of help. And again, till we meet again, I really hope that you stay healthy and happy. See you in the next one, guys.